The word compromise has been on my mind a lot lately. I think many people would consider the concept of compromising as something negative because it's easy to focus on what you're not getting or what you have to give up. But what if we thought about all that we are getting and all that others may be getting and how much we could gain? Is it really even a compromise anymore? If you can let go of expectations, how many incredible, unexpected things might you experience instead? This video that I'm about to share with you was the result of many compromises. It's definitely not the video I was hoping to show, but does that mean it's not worth sharing or has no value? Thanks for tuning in today. I know it's been a couple of months since I've posted anything, but it's definitely not because of a lack of wanting to or a lack of progress on Mr. Green. My life got pretty busy, busier than it already was, and continuing on my theme of compromise, I had to make some choices and decisions and reprioritize some other things in my life. And I wasn't able to get any videos out in the meantime. But over the last couple months, I've still been working on Mr. Green whenever I can. And I've finished the kitchen, and I finished the entryway. And I also have been planning on our first winter road trip. Now, that was the main reason why I got this RV, was because I really wanted to travel around the country and explore and discover new mountains to go snowboarding at. And so I was very, very excited to get one started this year. And I worked hard and planned it for a couple of months, and I had so many goals and intentions of showing you footage of snowboarding and beautiful scenery, winter fire pits, and even wanting to discover a secret hot spring, but none of that happened. Off of work. My daughter was on her winter break, and I even convinced my mom to join us on this trip, on our first winter road trip. And I had a plan to drive a large loop up to Alberta, Canada, to visit the little village of Banff and do some snowboarding along the way and some sightseeing. And my plan would have worked out beautifully. I had everything down to the T, but I just happened to pick the absolute wrong week.
Can you guess which major city next week could reach its coldest daytime high in 100 years and break a daily record? Well, we're looking at you in Calgary.
51 below in Rapid City, guys. This Arctic air is going to come and settle in for the entire weekend. Could be across the Midwest, the coldest Christmas we have seen in nearly 40 years.
So I'd seen the weather forecast, and I probably should have canceled it at that point, but the problem with me is I'm very goal-oriented, and once I have something in my mind that I want to do, I do it. I make it happen, and I'm very determined to get it done. And so I had this plan to take this road trip on this week. And even though I saw the forecast and the temperatures were going to be pretty low, I said, I'm okay. We're going to be fine. It's not that bad. We're going to be just fine. And I went along with it anyway. And that was probably my first mistake. The first night wasn't all that bad. It was in the 20s and it was cold, but nothing too horrible. And the site that I was able to reserve even had water available. A lot of our RV campsites turn their water off in the winter because of freezing, but this campsite actually had a heated water outlet and power and even like a sewer dump station right there at my site. So it was fine. Everything was great and we were warm inside. And so I thought, okay, this trip is going just as planned. However, the next morning I discovered my black tank valve was just frozen solid. My gray tank was fine and I was able to dump that, but I couldn't get my black tank open. So at this point, my black tank wasn't very full, and so I thought, okay, that's no big deal. I'll just dump it at the next stop that we had. And I have a heated electrical cord, and I would, get it thawed out and be able to dump it at the next spot. So at this point, I wasn't even worried. I thought everything was still going as planned. So this is when things started to take a turn for the worst. The temperature dropped significantly, so now it wasn't even just below freezing, it was below zero, about -15 if I remember correctly. I was fully prepared to thaw out the holding tanks. I had heaters and the heated electrical cord, but what I wasn't expecting was all of the snow and ice build up from the drive. So at this point, I was still trying to hold on to this dream of having this perfect road trip. And so I was very frustrated that things weren't going as planned. And I was trying so hard to salvage the trip and everything that I had planned for it. So I was outside very stressed about trying to get everything thawed out, get the ice melted, and be able to even access the valves to even dump my tanks. But it just took so long. It took hours for me to do that. I was finally able to get my tanks thawed out, but it took all night. And then once I did thaw it out, it was, I had quite a little disaster with my black tank. So despite my little accident with the black tank, I was happy that I was able to get it opened and drained and, emptied out. But I wasn't able to get my gray tank open because there was just so much ice just completely frozen around the opening valve. So I just tried to continue working on that, and luckily the gray tank was empty because I was able to empty it the night before, and we were able to do dishes and take showers and things like that. So it was still salvageable at this point and not too terrible of a trip, but it was just very stressful. At this point, I had been driving and I was tired and I couldn't relax or anything, and it was pretty cold. But I asked the rest of my family, hey, should we keep going or should we turn around? Because it's only going to get colder the next night. Banff was the coldest stop along our route. And they all said, no, let's just keep going. We've gotten this far. Let's just keep going. So I said, okay, let's move forward. So we just went to bed, and I figured I could try to dump my gray tank the next day at our next stop. So I felt a little bit better moving forward, going to Banff on day 3. We got to Banff safely. The roads were good. It was actually a beautiful day. We were able to enjoy a lot of the beautiful scenery and mountains along the way. And we got to Banff and people were walking around, and it wasn't too cold quite yet. And we stopped into town and had dinner at this nice little Japanese restaurant, and then headed to the campsite. And I got everything set up, and I thought, okay, you know what, I think this is going to be an okay night. We'll be able to just relax and take it easy. But this is when I discovered that my hot water tank now was frozen. And the problem with the hot water tank is that, you know, it heats to temperature, and then once it gets to temperature, it turns off, and the water can stay hot in the tank for quite a while, a couple hours probably. But in that time span between when it was being heated and when it needed to heat up again, it froze. The water line completely froze, and also the controls stopped responding. It was so cold outside, like it was still during the day, and it was like minus 20 degrees. And I was trying to take pictures, and my phone wouldn't even work. I took it outside, and it just like died instantly. With the temperatures being so cold also, I mean, I was bundled up. I had several pairs of pants on, and boots and mittens and hats. And even with me bundled up, being outside for a couple minutes, my toes and my fingers were starting to freeze up. And I realized that there's really no way that I would want to be snowboarding up on a mountain where it was even colder and windier up on a mountaintop. So I talked with my daughter, and we decided, let's just bag the snowboarding, because we were planning on snowboarding the next day. It was just so cold. It reached down, below minus 30 this night. But amazingly, the furnace still worked, and I had power to be able to run my extra heaters, but everything else was pretty much frozen at this point. And I think I just kind of lost that will to have like this enjoyable trip. It was just like every step along the way, there was just something breaking, something freezing, something not working. And every day it was just driving, getting to a spot, trying to fix things. And it just wasn't enjoyable at all. And now that we decided we're not going to snowboard, then we just said, I think we're done with this trip. It's just not going well. And so I just went to bed, and in the morning, amazingly, the car started. It kind of lagged a little bit. I was worried about the engine even starting, but it started. And I had 4 more days planned on this trip originally, but I just decided to cut a couple of the stops out and double up on my driving and just try to get home as soon as possible and just get us home safely. So something really wonderful happens when you're able to let go. I think a lot of the times when people have plans or goals and they don't happen the way they want, it's so easy to become fixated on a specific outcome that you want to happen. And if things don't go that way, it becomes very disappointing, or you get angry or frustrated. It's just, that's where a lot of the anxiety comes from, is trying to make something happen that you have in your mind that you wanted it to happen. But sometimes things just come up, and you have to be able to be fluid. And I think that was a big lesson that I learned on this trip. I was able to let go of this plan that I had. I had this idea that we would have this really amazing, wonderful road trip, and of course, nothing was going as planned, and I was taking the blame for a lot of that. I just felt like such a failure that I picked the wrong week, and that, things weren't working and things weren't going the way that we had planned, and nobody was having fun. And so I took a lot of the blame for that. But once I was able to let go and realize that, despite my best efforts and my best planning, I just couldn't compete with the temperatures, and the RV couldn't compete with the temperatures, with everything freezing and breaking and things like that. The RV, Mr. Green did amazing. He did the best that he could, but we just could not compete with those kind of temperatures. I mean, even in the town of Banff, there were stores that were closing because their heaters weren't working. So the fact that an RV, this Class C RV that isn't a 4-season RV, that we were able to still drive through safely, and we were able to sleep warm and snugly at night. The fact that we were safe just means the world to me, and I'm so grateful that we were still able to get through safely. And it wasn't all that horrible. We got to our last destination, and I was able to connect to some power, so I was able to throw on some heaters and get the rig nice and warm. They had a nice washroom located really close by, so we were all able to take really hot showers, and we made a nice dinner, watched a movie, and this place even had year-round hot springs that were available. So strangely enough, this last night was probably the best night. It was my favorite night. It was the most relaxed night because I was able to let go of all of my previous ideas and previous plans, and just let go of trying to achieve something that wasn't going to happen. And it ended up being the most enjoyable night of our trip. Got here in the dark last night, so let's check out the view. Still got lots of frost on the windows. But look at this view. How beautiful is that? Got the sunrise, the mountains, the snow. It brings a calm, peaceful end to this very stressful trip. It's kind of a beautiful way to close out this trip. About expectations and compromise and letting go on this trip. It definitely didn't turn out the way that I had planned, but it turned out the way that I wanted it to. It was way too cold to snowboard or spend much time outside, but we still got to see some amazing views. I was stressed out for the majority of the trip, but I still was able to find a few moments of peace and solitude. I may not have found that secret hidden hot spring that I wanted to, but I found one that felt just as nice. And maybe winter RV road trips aren't for everyone, but we still laughed and enjoyed our adventure together. Despite all of the problems we had during the trip, I am so grateful that we were safe and that we got this time together. I wouldn't change that for anything.